Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going deep, really deep into audio excerpts from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's The Evolving Self. You really got me intrigued with this one.
Oh, it's a fascinating exploration. This one goes way beyond even his famous work on flow. We're going to uncover how the self actually evolved.
Yes.
And not just personally, but for societies as a whole.
All right, I am so ready. Get ready for some serious mind-blowing stuff, folks.
Yeah.
Now, just in case anyone needs a little refresher, Csikszentmihalyi, he was a super famous psychologist, known for that concept of flow, that state of total absorption when you're just completely in the zone.
Exactly. But in the evolving self, he takes on this much bigger question. What makes a self complex?
Okay.
And how does that complexity actually lead to a more fulfilling, you could even say, a more transcendent life?
So we're not just talking individual happiness here. We're talking about that bigger picture.
Right.
How do our individual selves kind of play into that overall well-being of society? Man, this is already getting deep.
It is. And to kick things off, Csikszentmihalyi throws in this idea of ratification. Sounds complicated, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's something we all do, all of the time. We don't even realize it.
Okay, I'm hooked. Break it down for me. What is this ratification thing?
Right.
And how does it connect back to this whole idea of the self?
All right. So think about it. Our brains, they're bombarded with information constantly.
Oh, yeah.
So to make sense of it all, what do? We create these mental categories.
John Strucks.
Right. Group things together, give them a label. Like our brains are saying, whoa, hold on, let's simplify this a bit.
Right.
Yep.
So instead of seeing it like every single tree, we create this concept of a forest. Or instead of looking at billions of stars, we call it the Milky Way.
Right.
It's just a way of kind of organize all that information.
It is. And just like forest or the Milky Way, the self, it's a mental construct too. We take all our experiences, thoughts, feelings, memories, we bundle them all up.
Yeah.
And we say, hey, that's me. But here's the catch. These constructs, as helpful as they are, sometimes they can create illusions.
Whoa. Okay, I think I see where this is going. So we often think of the self as this like fixed thing.
Yeah.
But what if it's not? What if it's way more fluid, always changing?
You're getting it. Csikszentmihalyi argues that the self, it's constantly being shaped by what we're paying attention to.
Okay.
And he uses this fascinating example of the newer people of East Africa. They're pastoralists, and their entire lives, they revolve around their cattle. I mean, they know each animal like intimately, its lineage, its habits, everything.
So it's more than just like, these are my cows.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It's like they're deeply intertwined with who they are.
It is. It's this profound connection, goes way beyond just ownership. Now, think about your own life for a minute. What are you spending most of your time focused on?
Ooh, good question.
Work, hobbies, social media?
That is a bit of a wake-up call. If where we put our attention really shapes who we are,
It does.
then what are we actually shaping ourselves into?
It is. And it's not about judgment, it's about awareness. Once we understand how this ratification process works, we can start to make more conscious choices about what we let shape that sense of self.
So if we're constantly bombarded with advertising or, focused on like status symbols or just glued to our phones, are those things actually becoming part of who we are? Man, that's scary.
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
It is. Now, if the self is so malleable, how has it evolved over time? Csikszentmihalyi takes us on this incredible journey through history to see how different cultures have viewed the ideal self, and he actually uses art as a window into that.
Oh, I love that. Using these tangible examples like art to really understand these big psychological concepts. So where does he start? Where does this historical exploration begin?
Ancient Greece, he looks at those iconic Kuroi statues.
Ooh, yeah. The ones, those statues of the young men, often nude, with their fists clenched at their sides.
Exactly.
I've seen those in museums.
Yeah. And they always convey this sense of strength and discipline.
They do.
Right. For the ancient Greeks, these statues, they represented the ideal of physical perfection. Of the self that embodied strength, discipline, athleticism.
It's like they were saying, this is what a perfect human looks like.
Yes, exactly.
It's amazing how much those statues can really reveal about a culture's values.
Right.
And what they were striving for.
And even within Greek art itself, we see an evolution. Later statues, they started incorporating elements of beauty and intelligence,
Interesting.
reflecting a change in those values.
So the ideal self wasn't static. It was constantly being like refined and redefined.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And what's really cool is even with these huge cultural differences, there are these common threads that kind of pop up. You compare those Greek Kouroi statues to, say, Buddhist sculptures. You find a similar emphasis on inner serenity and peace.
It's like all these different cultures on their own paths. They all kind of arrived at this similar understanding
Yeah,
of what a truly transcendent self might look like.
absolutely. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about how we represent aspects of ourselves, but through objects. It's like these objects become extensions of who we are individually and collectively.
Oh, that's so true. I'm thinking of my grandmother's old cookbooks, you know.
Yeah.
They're not just recipes.
No.
They represent like her love of cooking, her family traditions, even a little bit of her personality.
That's a great example. Csikszentmihalyi actually uses the example of medicine bundles.
Medicine bundles.
Yeah, in some Native American cultures.
Right.
These bundles, they would contain these items that symbolized the owners, like knowledge and achievements, a very personal, powerful representation of the self.
Wow. And we still do this today, though, right?
Yeah,
Think about tattoos, personalized phone cases, even the cars we drive. It's all saying something about who we are or who we, want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He even uses a funny example. Our cars. You know how a rust spot on your car can feel as distressing as a bald spot, right?
Oh, totally.
That's how much we connect to these objects.
It's like our cars, they become like extensions of ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Our mobile representation of self.
Yeah.
But it's not just personal objects, though, right? There are those collective representations
Oh, absolutely.
that shape us, too.
Think about tribal masks, Roman fasces, cathedrals, even modern-day advertising.
Wow.
These images, these symbols, they represent shared values, aspirations, even anxieties.
Makes you wonder, what does all that imagery in like contemporary advertising, what does that tell us about our current ideal self?
Right.
Are we all striving for inner peace and fulfillment?
No.
Or are we more focused on like material possessions and external validation?
That is a question we should all be asking ourselves. But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's shift gears and talk about how the self actually develops throughout our lives.
Right.
Csikszentmihalyi outlines these specific stages of development, each with its own goals and challenges.
So it's not like we're born with a fully formed self, right? It's something that evolves
Right.
and grows as we go through life.
Exactly.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. Can you walk me through those stages?
Absolutely. It all starts with the basics.
Yeah.
That first stage is all about meeting those fundamental physiological needs.
Right, the essentials.
Yeah, things like safety, comfort, nourishment. Think of a newborn baby, right?
Okay,
Their whole world revolves around getting those needs met.
makes sense. You can't really focus on much else if you're hungry or cold or feeling unsafe.
Right, exactly. And for some people, those basic needs, they remain the primary focus throughout their whole lives. But assuming those needs are met, we move on to that next stage,
Okay,
where social acceptance, belonging, those become central.
so that's when we start like craving connection,
Yeah,
wanting to fit in with the group, earn respect from others.
exactly. We see it all the time, especially during adolescence.
Right.
Think peer pressure, the desire to be popular,
Oh, yeah.
intense fear of rejection.
Yeah. It's like we're hardwired for that connection,
We are.
that belonging. But what happens if those needs aren't met, like during that crucial stage?
It can lead to all sorts of challenges later on, feelings of insecurity, difficulty forming healthy relationships, even a lack of self-worth.
Wow.
But let's assume we navigate that stage successfully.
Okay.
We reach a point where individuation becomes, like, paramount.
This is where we break free from the mold, right?
Yes,
Assert our independence, start figuring out what makes us unique.
you nailed it. We explore our talents, discover our passions, and start to define ourselves as separate from the group. It's a crucial step in developing a strong sense of self.
So we're not just like a member of the tribe anymore.
Right.
We're our own person,
Right.
but it's not the final destination.
It's not.
Yeah. Where do we go from there?
Csikszentmihalyi suggests there's one more stage, and it's a big one. He calls it transcendence.
Transcendence. Okay.
This is where we move beyond our individual needs and desires
Okay.
and connect with something larger than ourselves.
It's like an outward expansion.
Yeah.
Right. We start with the self, then we move to include others, And then eventually we reach for something even bigger,
Yeah.
maybe a sense of purpose or a connection to something beyond our individual existence.
Beautiful way to put it. It's like climbing a mountain, right?
Okay, yeah,
Each stage offers a different perspective.
right.
And the higher you climb, the more expansive your view becomes.
You mentioned earlier that this whole model of like individual development,
Hmm.
it might actually mirror the evolution of the self in human history.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
It is. It's a fascinating parallel. Think about it. Early humans, they were primarily focused on survival.
Right. Food,
Huh.
shelter, the
Yeah,
basic.
exactly. Then, as societies formed, tribalism took hold. The focus shifted to that collective good of the group.
So mirroring those early stages of like individual development,
Right.
then as societies got more complex, individualism emerged,
Yeah.
kind of like that individuation stage we were just talking about.
Exactly. And now, maybe as we're facing these global challenges, climate change, social injustice,
Right.
maybe we're entering a new era where it's a sense of interconnectedness, transcendence.
Yeah.
Those are becoming increasingly important.
Whoa. That is a lot to take in, but it makes a lot of sense. It's like we're collectively moving towards that final stage of development, recognizing that our individual well-being is like deeply intertwined with the well-being of the planet
Yeah.
and everyone on it.
It is.
And it's here that Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow really comes into play. He says flow isn't just about, feeling good. It actually contributes to the complexity of the self.
It does.
Now, remind me, what exactly is flow? And how does it connect to this whole idea of self-development?
Flow, it's that state of complete absorption in an activity where you lose track of time.
Right.
You feel totally engaged.
Yeah.
You're challenged, but your skills are up to the task. It's
Oh.
like being in the zone.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right.
Whether it's like playing music, writing, or even having a really great conversation.
Exactly.
But how does flow actually contribute to the complexity of the self?
Well, flow requires that balance, right, of challenge and skill.
Right.
The challenge, it pushes us to differentiate, to stretch those abilities, step outside our comfort zone.
Okay.
And as we master those challenges, we integrate those new skills, that knowledge, into our sense of self.
So it's like we're constantly expanding our repertoire,
Yes.
becoming more like multifaceted and adaptable.
Exactly. Adding new tools to your toolbox. But here's the crucial point.
Okay.
The activity, it has to be meaningful and challenging.
So like mindlessly scrolling through social media, that might give you a little hit of flow.
Yeah.
But it's not really contributing to any real personal growth.
It's not. It's not.
So it's not just about finding any flow activity. It's about finding activities that really align with your values,
Yes.
that actually contribute to your development as a person.
And that's where spirituality and wisdom come in. Csikszentmihalyi argues that these qualities, they're essential for a truly transcendent self.
Now, when he talks about spirituality, is he talking about any specific religion or dogma?
Not at all. Not at all. He's talking about cultivating that mindset that seeks deeper meaning and purpose, a connection to something bigger than ourselves, recognizing our interconnectedness and living in a way that contributes to harmony,
Okay.
both internally and externally.
Yeah. I like that. It's a much more inclusive and universal understanding of spirituality. Now, what about wisdom? How does he define that?
He breaks it down into three key aspects: cognitive skill, virtue, and inner peace.
Okay, break those down for me.
Absolutely. Cognitive skill, it's about seeing beyond the surface,
Yeah.
questioning assumptions and seeking those universal truths.
So not just accepting things at face value.
Right.
You're really digging deeper, challenging your own biases, trying to get a more nuanced understanding of the world.
You got it. And virtue, in this context, it's about acting on that knowledge
Okay.
for the common good. It's not enough to simply know what's right. You have to live it.
You have to walk the walk.
Exactly.
Not just talk the talk. You got to put your knowledge into action. Make those choices that benefit not just you, but others.
Yes. And then finally, inner peace.
Okay.
Csikszentmihalyi observed that truly wise people, they tend to be serene and content,
Yeah.
They're not easily swayed by those external circumstances
Okay.
or driven by ego.
Like they found that sense of equilibrium,
Yes.
that calmness in the middle of all the craziness that life throws at you.
Think about a wise person you admire, What qualities stand out to you? Do you see those three aspects of wisdom reflected in their life?
That is a great question. It is. Now, Csikszentmihalyi also talks about the importance of recognizing those right challenges, right? The ones that
Yeah.
propel us toward transcendence, not the ones that lead us down a path of stagnation or harm.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. He shares these compelling stories to illustrate this point. For example, he highlights the work of Susie Valdez.
Okay.
She devoted her life to helping the poor in Juarez, Mexico.
Wow.
She didn't just see a problem, she saw a challenge, an opportunity to make a real difference.
It wasn't about charity or handouts. It
Right.
was about empowering people,
Yeah.
helping them create a better life for themselves.
Exactly. He also contrasts the stories of Linus Pauling, the Nobel Prize-winning chemist,
Okay.
and Vera Rubin, the renowned astronomer, both driven by different types of challenges,
Right.
but both found flow in their work and made significant contributions to their fields.
It's inspiring to see people channeling their energy and passion into something so meaningful.
It is.
But not all challenges are created equal, right?
Yeah.
Some can lead you down a pretty destructive path.
Unfortunately, that's true. He highlights the dangers of seeking validation through, negative means, like teenage pregnancy, gang violence, even destructive behaviors like substance abuse. He tells a rather thought-provoking story about Zeke, a privileged student who finds a twisted sense of self through seal clubbing.
That's tough to hear. But it's a good reminder that not all challenges lead to growth.
Right.
Some lead to destruction and suffering
Right.
for ourselves and for others.
And that's why that discernment is so important,
Yeah.
He stresses the need to find flow in activities that contribute to a better world, not the ones that tear it down.
Oh.
He even suggests that a good society is one that actively supports the development of each individual's potential, providing opportunities for action and flow.
That's not just about individual growth.
No.
It's about creating a social environment.
Right. Yes.
One that fosters that growth and allows individuals to really contribute their unique talent,
Yes.
their passions to the greater good.
Exactly.
Man, that is a powerful idea.
And he goes even further, revisiting the French Revolution motto, liberty, equality, fraternity.
Yeah.
Sounds beautiful in theory, right?
It does.
But in practice, much harder to achieve.
You're right. Freedom and equality, those are relatively easy to legislate. But fraternity, that sense of genuine connection.
Yes.
They care for one another.
Yeah,
That's a much harder thing to cultivate.
it is. And he examines how historical movements, they've often fostered solidarity within a group,
Okay.
but at the expense of others. Think nationalism, communism,
Right.
even some forms of religious extremism.
They create those strong bonds within the group, but then it often leads to division and conflict with those outside the group.
Exactly.
So how do we create a society that supports both individual freedom and collective responsibility,
Yeah.
that embraces both our uniqueness and our interconnectedness?
Yeah.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Right.
And Csikszentmihalyi actually turns to Johann Huizinga's idea, this intriguing idea that many social institutions,
Yeah.
they actually start out as games.
As games.
Yeah, games that become serious over time.
Okay, that's an interesting concept. Can you give me some examples?
Think about the early days of flight.
Okay.
For the Wright brothers, it wasn't about economic gain or military dominance.
No.
It was about the pure joy of solving this challenging problem, the thrill of defying gravity.
It was a game,
Yes.
a playful exploration.
Yeah.
But it led to a revolutionary technology that changed the world.
Exactly. Or consider the early days of automobiles.
Okay.
It wasn't just about transportation. It was about the exhilaration of speed, the freedom of the open road. It was a new and exciting experience that really captured the imagination.
And of course, technology itself, it's always held this promise
Yeah.
of freeing us from all that drudgery, giving us more time to pursue our passions and interests.
But as we've discussed, technology, it can also become parasitic.
Oh, yeah.
It can consume our time and attention without really enriching our lives. It becomes the game we can't stop playing, even when it's no longer serving us.
So how do we make sure those new technologies, those new memes, as Csikszentmihalyi calls them,
Yeah.
enhance our lives and don't control them? How do we stay the players, not the pawns in this game?
It requires consciousness, discernment, and a willingness to question the rules of the game.
Okay.
You can't just blindly adopt every new technology or trend that comes along.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves, does this serve my highest good? Does this contribute to a better world?
It's about being mindful,
Yes.
intentional with our choices, making sure we're playing games that align with our values,
Yes.
our aspirations.
To understand how this dynamic plays out on a bigger scale, Csikszentmihalyi provides several historical examples of how this pursuit of flow has actually shaped institutions and social structures.
Oh, okay. I'd love to hear about those. How has that pursuit of flow, how has it actually influenced the course of history?
He looks at Confucianism, Islam, the Jesuit order, the Protestant work ethic, among others.
Okay.
Each of these, they emerged from a desire for order, meaning a sense of purpose.
It's fascinating how something as seemingly simple as enjoying yourself, finding fulfillment, can actually lead to these really profound changes in society and culture.
It is. But here's the catch.
Yep.
Each of these solutions, while initially promoting complexity and harmony, they eventually became rigid and susceptible to exploitation. They turned into the very things they were trying to overcome.
Oh, wow. So it's like a cautionary tale.
Okay.
Every solution eventually becomes a problem, and we're just constantly faced with this challenge of adapting and evolving. So where does that leave us? If every solution, it just becomes a problem, are we just stuck? Are we stuck in this loop of progress and decline?
That's the big question, isn't it? Facing us now, in the 21st century, we've made these incredible advancements, right, in technology.
Oh, yeah.
But have we really evolved in how we understand ourselves, our place in the world?
It does feel like we're at this crossroads, right?
Yeah.
We have all this knowledge, so much power, it's right there at our fingertips.
It is.
But are we using it wisely? Are we building a world that supports true flourishing?
Yeah.
Not just for individuals, but for the planet, for everyone.
Csikszentmihalyi, he doesn't offer easy answers. Instead, he leaves us with these really, really profound questions.
Okay.
He asks, what's the new game, That new set of ideas and practices that will help us navigate all this complexity. How do we build that society that supports individual growth and collective well-being, both?
Whoa. Those are some seriously big questions. It's not something, that the government or institutions can just solve for us.
No.
It requires a shift, right?
Yep.
Like a shift in consciousness.
Yeah.
A willingness to look beyond our own little bubble, that immediate self-interest, and embrace a much more holistic way of looking at things.
It's that balance we keep coming back to. Building a transcendent self and a good society, it requires that balance of individual freedom and collective responsibility, finding flow in those activities that enhance complexity, not entropy, recognizing how connected we all are, and acting in ways that benefit everyone, not just ourselves.
That's a tall order.
Yeah.
But listening to all this, I am feeling a sense of hope, too. If we understand these patterns, these stages of development, personally and collectively, maybe, just maybe, we can choose a different path,
I agree. Awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
And that's what makes these deep dives so valuable. It's not just about understanding the ideas, it's about applying them to our lives.
Absolutely. So think about it as you go about your day. Where's your attention going? What challenges are you choosing? What kind of impact are you having?
Are you contributing to harmony, or are you adding to the chaos? Are you building a more complex self? One that's both differentiated and integrated. Are you playing a game that's even worth winning? One that leaves the world a little bit better.
It all circles back, right?
Yeah.
To that idea that the self, it's not fixed. It's this process, this ongoing evolution.
Right.
And just like individuals, societies evolve too.
They do. And that evolution is not set in stone. It's shaped by the choices we make,
Right.
the challenges we take on, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what's possible.
So what will your contribution be? What's your next step toward building a more transcendent self and a better world?
That's for you to decide.
Well, I don't know about you, but I know this deep dive gave me a lot to think about. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.